FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is 9/11/2020. Hey, by the way, don't forget we're having our free gold giveaway. Win a half an ounce of gold. Just go to our contest page, financialsurvivalnetwork.com/contest, and enter today. And it's our pleasure to have the erstwhile Dr. Steve Turley back with us. Pretty soon he's going to be so big he won't even deign to come on this puny little podcast. But right now we'll take him when we can get him. Hey, Dr. Steve, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Kerry. I'm working on my posh British accent as well. So
All right, we like British accents here. It's so persuasive and classy. So if you need some lessons, we can assist you in the matter.
All right.
But hey, so the riots continue. Interesting thing happens in Chicago. We had the feds finally, Lori Lightfoot, whatever her name is. She's the mayor of Chicago, and she relents. Oh, we'll take federal help. And we see that the murder rate in a month has been cut by 50%.
Yeah.
This is a pretty dangerous move that she did there, actually doing something for the benefit of Chicago residents.
Yeah, you're wondering when Ted Wheeler of Portland is going to do that, or Jenny Durkin in Seattle, or even Bill de Blasio in New York. My heavens, talk about the fall of a once great city. But that's absolutely right to the extent, and again, this is just working so well in Trump's favor. What he basically did was he maintained federalism, which a lot of conservatives are very happy he did, and said, look, we in a federalist society, we have law enforcement jurisdictions, and I don't necessarily have the jurisdiction to come into Chicago and clean up the streets unless you ask me to do so. This is how we respect our balance of powers. And so on the one hand, he's looked at all the mayors that have seen civic unrest and said, look, you need help, you got it. Look at what happened to D.C. We stopped any kind of civil unrest on the spot. Our feds know what to do. You just give us a call. We're here to do it. But if you don't give us a call, then it's on you. You're doing it. This is all you. So it's sort of a heads he wins, tails you lose. He's got this. No matter what ends up happening, he turns out to be the champion. He's either been a champion of federalism or he's been a champion of law and order. In the case of Chicago with Lightfoot finally relenting. She had to, by the way, Kerry. She was losing so many businesses who were leaving. They said, that's it. Bloomingdale's, for example, Macy's, I know they're under the same parent company, but they were like, we're out of here. We're not going to be in downtown anymore. And so she had no choice. And I came across a stat that was fascinating that on average, urban, cities and metropolitan areas, those governments are dependent of 60% of their budget, the revenue comes in through property taxes and business taxes. Now, what do you think is going to happen when all these well-off residences and businesses start this mass exodus out of the big cities? So she had no choice. So hopefully this is the beginning of the end of this great unrest, and it doesn't have to go any farther. But if it does, it plays out in different dynamics, of course.
Yeah. Well, what about assuming Trump gets reelected? You think we're going to have a new wave of it then?
Oh, very much so. It seems to me like that. So what you have right now, and we've talked about this before, I think is you have a civil war that's actually first and foremost going on in the Democratic Party. So it's a civil war between the new left, the BLM, Antifa left, that tend to be a very tribalistic left on the one hand via BLM, and a very Marxist left on Antifa, although, of course, BLM shares in that. But what they both have in common is they just want to break things, right? They want to knock things down, and they want to control things. And so in insurgency studies, you find insurgent movements always look for the weakest areas, the areas with the least amount of social structure in place. Think of, Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, or, ISIS in destroyed Iraq, or, Mogadishu and all the like. They look for places where there's no resistance, there's no police force or anything like that, and then they can occupy it. So they're trying to create those kinds of situations in many of our cities. And it's a war between them and the old left, the old bourgeois white left, the John Kerrys, the Bidens and the Clintons and so on. And so in many ways, I think the old left is trying to deflect the aggression that's being aimed towards them. And you do hear it a lot. I mean, after Charlemagne the God had that a horrific interview with Biden where Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. I mean, Charlemagne the God just came out and said, Biden's part of the problem. He's part of the systemic racist structure. He's just as much of a problem as any Republican. I mean, you're going to hear that kind of rhetoric coming from BLM. So in order to deflect that, I think, the Pelosi's and the Schumers are deliberately trying to get them to fight the right, as it were. So, and that's where you start seeing the rise of armed militias coming in, particularly the Proud Boys, the 3%ers and so on. A lot of people don't know that armed militias have actually doubled in size in just the last 10 years. There's been a surge going on. They used to be very anti-government, particularly during the Obama years. That changed in 2016. They became very, very pro-government. With Trump coming in, they saw a champion there. And now it seems, at least a lot of people on the old bougie left, the old establishment left, they're very concerned that Trump's very positive attaboy tweets for these pro-Trump militias are actually, in effect, mobilizing them in case any kind of civil unrest were to come back again, since obviously we know that Democrat mayors and Democratic city councils have deliberately abdicated their law enforcement responsibilities. So it's going to be it's a volatile situation. Let's just put it that way.
Volatile, to say the least. It's almost kind of it's just shocking that a political party which takes itself seriously can be undermining the rule of law and the confidence of the citizenry in their law enforcement agencies. I am not the greatest defender of the police. I think there's many instances we can demonstrate in the past of them going overboard. But I think now they're more accountable than ever. And the fact is, there are so few police, killing unarmed blacks. There were 9 instances last year, and 6 of them, I think, were justified, where they were attacked by these people and had to use deadly force. And it's portrayed as like this daily event. When you ask people, well, how many unarmed blacks do you think were killed? They'll say hundreds. They don't know anything about what they're talking about.
Right. Yeah, Heather McDonald of the Manhattan Institute has done fantastic work in this area, and of course, there have been a number of scholars who have documented that the idea that police are disproportionately shooting unarmed blacks is simply a myth. It does not exist. As Heather McDonald has detailed, white assailants are 3 times more likely to be shot than blacks when unarmed. And there's the statistics they're across the board. Now, like you said, there are stats that show that police do tend to go overboard in the use of force with minorities. That seems to be the case across the board. But again, the question is, why are they doing it? To just turn around and say, well, the problem is racism, to kind of do this Salem witchcraft kind of thing, because they're witches. That's why. There's another explanation. Other other explanations are because they're subject to tremendous crimes and sabotage and so forth in certain areas of the country where getting the person who's the suspect under some kind of restraint immediately is absolutely essential. And so there are different explanations for it. I think, when all said and done, I mean, someone like Jordan Peterson would say, look, if you're really doing a study, a causal study to try to figure out what's behind things, you can't just say it's this, it's X, and leave it at that, because most things are the result of multiple factors. So we have to ask the question, what percentage of the cause is X involved with, and how do we know? And so that's the key question. If racism is involved, well, what percentage would it be? First of all, we're going to have to define the racism, and then we're going to have to say, how do we determine actual racism, and then what's the percentage of it? When you get there, you find, especially in a lot of these studies, it dissipates to negligibility.
Yeah, of course. Look, I once said to somebody, and this is a documented fact, hey, down in Miami, there's the highest rate of uninsured, unlicensed drivers in the country, unregistered cars, and they're mostly Hispanic. And I was accused of being a racist because I just stated a fact, and it just reminded me of Daniel Patrick Moynihan's old saying, you can have your own opinions, but you can't have your own facts. But the left wants to have their own facts as well.
Right. Now, of course. Well, it's the partization of knowledge. So we're seeing knowledge and facts themselves being weaponized. And that's exactly what we're seeing with, the weaponization of history. America's racist and intolerant and bigoted and evil society and so on. The truth is a very, very difficult thing when you don't have the metaphysics to anchor it. And what we're finding is that when you create a highly secularized society, and then you invent something called facts actually have a history. Mary Poovey, the scholar, did a wonderful study on the history of facts that comes out of the French Revolution. This idea of factum, this idea that there are things that are true for everybody, regardless of your position in life. That came after they got rid of the aristocracy and the priesthood and the monarchy, who supposedly had a special charism of knowledge that the average person doesn't have. I was going to say the average Joe, but I guess I have to say the average Jean doesn't have. Coming out of the French Revolution, right? And we've got great things. Great things came out of, as it were, the invention of facts. Indicators and statistics and all. How would we do baseball without facts if you think it through? My, oh my, and earned, ERAs and all that sort of stuff. They're great things, but we're also finding without a strong metaphysic of truth, they can be also radically manipulated as well. So while, again, I definitely would sympathize with what Patrick Moynihan said. Unfortunately, again, we're just seeing people being able to use statistics and percentages and indicators as weapons to push ideological commitments. And so those are just dress. They're literally dross for something much deeper and more pernicious. So we're seeing certainly the weaponization and the partization of knowledge, and it's a very scary thing, because if you think it through, we are, as a constitutional republic, we are based on the notion of what scholars call the communication model, and the communication model says, look, you and I can be, different ideologies, we can be different ethnicities, different cultures, whatever, but we can arrive at a common truth, right? Our whole Declaration of Independence is based on this. We hold these truths to be self-evident. So being human, first and foremost, we can arrive at common knowledges through common processes and so on. We're seeing that challenge today. And that's particularly being challenged, for example, by BLM radicals, who are what we call cultural absolutists, who make the argument that because we're of different cultures and ethnicities and races, we cannot come to any kind of common agreement. We have nothing in common. That's where the whole microaggressions kicks in. Microaggressions come in. We're saying, look, no matter what, you you as a white person are always going to clash with me and my sensibilities as an African American. So that's why National Review published a study that found that upwards of about 50% of our universities, the ones that were studied, 50% of them have racially segregated dorms, racially segregated orientation programs, and racially segregated graduations. We're going to a neo-segregationism, but now on the basis of BLM sensitivities. It's a fascinating thing. Talk about things going full circle.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. Well, let's switch up a little bit. Let's talk about the scamdemic here. Again, it's the subjectivization, if you will, of facts. The fact is, we saw that report come out. Straight COVID deaths in the absence of comorbidities, 6% of the total deaths. And then obviously there are people who've died as a result of COVID-19 who would still be here now. You can't deny that, even if they did have comorbidities, because we see with comorbidities, people can go on for many, many years. But it does tend to put the whole thing into perspective. And we see that normalization of death rates is resuming. And yet we're all locked down still. We got to wear these ridiculous masks that are scientifically unproven, especially makeshift ones. Where do you see this heading?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Trilogy Metals is a world-class developer in Alaska's Ambler mining district. The company already possesses 8 billion pounds of copper, 3 billion pounds of zinc, over 1 million gold-equivalent ounces, and now over 77 million pounds of cobalt. Trilogy's Arctic project boasts an after-tax net present value of $1.4 billion with a 33% IRR. Trilogy is led by an experienced management team with proven success in discovering and developing projects in Alaska. The company is well capitalized, has no debt, and possesses strong institutional support. Trilogy trades on the New York and Toronto exchanges under the ticker symbol TMQ. To learn more, go to trilogymetals.com. That's trilogymetals.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
I don't know where it's going. Again, you have to wonder, does it all change out on November 4th, right? Although they're doing everything they can to try to relativize what they already know to be a massive landslide win on November 3rd, calling it the Red Mirage, right? But, it's anyone's guess where that's going. It is clear, though, that the absolute lockdown that even Joe Biden seems to have thrown away, he suggested that were he to win, he would once again institute a national lockdown. I think those days are over. There's no way that you can have the kind of mass hysteria that we saw through these demonstrations and riots and so forth, where Democrat mayors and governors who just the week prior to that were saying that lockdowns and mask mandates were absolutely non-negotiable, suddenly turned around and said, no, but except if you were campaigning for social justice. I think everybody saw the asymmetrical, inconsistent application of these standards. So I think any kind of supreme lockdown at this point is over. And then it's just red state versus blue state, basically. It's the blue states that really are the ones that seem to have dealt with this pandemic more than anyone else in terms of their real numbers. And so we're seeing, I guess Cuomo just announced that they're going to bring back indoor dining in New York City. He's speaking on behalf of de Blasio now, which I think is interesting. Well, they have quite the relationship, don't they? So, so that's the other thing. I mean, there have been just real Democrat casualties in all of this, and de Blasio would be one of them. Nobody likes de Blasio. I mean, if anyone wants to become mayor of New York, here is your chance in the next election. So, I think it was just going to continue to play itself out and peter out at some point. But there's no question we're at its lowest levels. You're right. So the comorbidity level was astronomical. No one dreamed we were dealing with post 90% comorbidity rates. I mean, that's I mean, if that's the case, and again, I'm no doctor and all that, but if that's the case, I mean, we're dealing with a pretty hardcore flu at this point. If it's not knocking out, generally speaking, and again, we're talking over 90%. If it's not knocking out people who are generally healthy and and the like, and don't have comorbid issues, I mean, it's just what are you gonna do? I mean, you're not going to be able to launch another massive assault on freedoms and liberties with that kind of data out there.
Yeah, and I would just point out that over the weekend, Labor Day weekend, somebody flew a banner over the New York City beaches in Long Island saying "Gov killed Nana." And they were freaking out. And, the sociopathy that's come out, it's clear. Andy Cuomo is a sociopath. He has absolutely no empathy for the people who died as a result of his quote-unquote negligent actions. I personally think there was a bit of deliberativeness in there, but people have had it. And Cuomo did absolutely nothing to help New York City in its time of need. The only power there is in New York to get rid of officials who are derelict in their duty or guilty of criminal acts, which clearly de Blasio has been in the past, is removal by the governor of local officials. He has that unfettered power to do that. They can sue afterwards. He could have put his own person in there and put this to a stop, and he didn't do it. So that means he wanted it, and he's complicit. And wow, I can only imagine. I think regardless who you are, what your economic standing in society is, you got to be pretty outraged at what the blue state governors, I call her Eva Braun Whitmer, what she's done, what Murphy the murderer in New Jersey has done, what Wacky Wolf has done in Pennsylvania. They've just cost tens of thousands of lives. And it seems like it's almost too deliberate to have been left to chance.
Yeah, and I think most people understand that. They understand this. When all is said and done, the federal government can give all the resources that states need. They can assist them in any way that they can, which they did. There was never a hospital bed shortage that everybody was so worried about. Hence, keep Nana in the nursing homes and all that sort of stuff. There was never any shortage. They always had the ventilate kind of stuff. But I think everybody recognizes this is the onus of this is on local and state governments. They were the ones that were supposed to handle this. That's why you have South Dakota coming out of this very differently than, say, California or New York. So in the end, this is not President Trump. This isn't a federal issue. I mean, it would be if he refused to give him anything, but obviously that was not the case, not even by a long shot. So I think, it would be very interesting to see if the day of reckoning finally happens with the cities losing so much of their population, particularly New York right now, as well as San Francisco and LA. I saw that condo vacancies are up 40% in downtown LA right now. It's going to be very interesting because as people are moving out of the urban areas and into more the exurbs, it's different than before. They don't seem to be bringing, and again, we don't have hard studies on this yet, but they don't seem to be bringing their blue politics with them. They actually seem to be voting more defensively. And again, at least at the very least, if gun sales are any indicator, they're doing that quite literally. They're leaving the cities. They're buying their guns, right? 6 million or so first-time gun owners, first-time background checks. So it's very difficult to see them voting for the political party that's going to want to take away the guns, even though that issue has been completely taken off. I mean, your Second Amendment rights have never been more secure, I'll tell you that. So
yeah, it's crazy, and I agree with you there. In the past, when people of the left have left these blue places and gone to places like New Hampshire and Washington State, they've done so to flee high taxes. Now they're fleeing in the perception that their personal safety it'll be higher. They'll have a higher level in the places they're moving to than the places they've come from. And any thinking person, which I know often excludes many liberals, really has to understand that this is due to the breakdown in law, which their party and their former leaders have encouraged and played a major part in. Well, anyways, on that note, the vacuum cleaner is invading my studio here. So we're going to have to wrap it up. Steve, just tell us where we find you, how we get your podcast, which is, I now understand, is number 23 in political podcasts across the country.
Yeah. You can go to turleytalks.com. We've got all the links are there. That's the easiest one. You can check us out on my Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. They're all over the place, but you can find them on our website, turleytalks.com, or if you like YouTube, just punch in Dr. Steve Turley on our YouTube channel.
All right, excellent. Hey, in our gold contest, don't forget, you can win a half ounce of gold. Just go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com/contest. Enter now. Questions, comments, KL@KerryLutz.com. Dr. Steve, I'm sure we'll be talking to you very soon. You be well and take care.
All right, looking forward to it, Kerry. God bless.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.